The crystalline archives of Zephyria held warnings older than most civilizations, carved in the hardest minerals known to the galaxy. They spoke of a species that should never be awakened, never be provoked, never be underestimated. The Galactic Council had dismissed them as mythology for 3,000 years. They were about to learn why myths survive. Admiral Korvac stood before the holographic display showing Earth's solar system, his four arms crossed in a gesture of supreme confidence. The human homeworld hung there like a blue marble, defenseless and isolated. Around him, the greatest armada ever assembled hummed with deadly purpose. Ships from 47 different species, united in their conviction that humanity had grown too dangerous to exist. The ancient texts were clear, Korvac announced to his commanders. Humans are the reapers of the void, the silent death, the species that burn stars, pure superstition from a more primitive age. His tactical officer, a serpentine Vorthak, flickered her tongue nervously. Admiral, perhaps we should consider the warnings more seriously. The humans did defeat the Kraxon horde with inferior technology. Korvac's laugh was like grinding metal, luck and desperation. Today we end their threat permanently. The armada moved forward, 10,000 ships strong, each one a masterpiece of destruction. They had studied human military doctrine for decades, prepared for every known tactic, every recorded strategy. What they hadn't prepared for was the silence. As they crossed into the outer solar system, not a single human ship rose to meet them. No desperate transmissions begging for mercy. No last-ditch defensive formations around their colonies, just nothing. "Where are they?" whispered Commander Zerath from the bridge of the Vorthak dreadnought. The first sign something was wrong came when the asteroid belt began moving. What they had assumed were lifeless rocks revealed themselves as massive human installations, their surfaces bristling with weapons that defied known physics. But that wasn't the truly terrifying part. The terrifying part was the coordination. Thousands of installations built over centuries in absolute secrecy moved as one organism. The humans hadn't just militarized their asteroid belt. They had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Admiral Korvac watched his sensors as the first wave of his fleet simply disappeared. Not destroyed in conventional terms. The ships were there one moment, gone the next, leaving only expanding clouds of elementary particles. "Report," he barked. "Unknown weapon type, sir." They're somehow destabilizing matter at the quantum level. But the humans weren't done revealing their secrets. Jupiter's moon suddenly blazed with artificial light as massive structures unfolded from their surfaces, structures that had been disguised as natural formations for millennia. The gas giant itself began to change, its roiling storms organizing into geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "They've weaponized a gas giant," someone whispered in horror. The realization hit the galactic commanders like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. Every colony, every space station, every seemingly peaceful mining operation had been part of an elaborate trap spanning light years. The ancient warnings began to make sense. The text spoke of a species that built weapons from worlds and turned the void itself into their ally. What the galaxy's ancestors had witnessed wasn't mythology. It was a previous encounter with human preparedness. Commander Zerath's ship shuddered as space itself seemed to twist around them. Through the viewports, stars wheeled impossibly, showing impossible angles and geometries that shouldn't exist. "They're manipulating space-time," his science officer reported, his voice cracking with terror. The humans have somehow learned to fold reality itself. The assault became a rout within hours. Ships that tried to retreat found their escape routes cut off by barriers of twisted space. Those that tried to fight discovered their weapons were useless against an enemy that could selectively turn off the laws of physics in localized areas. Admiral Korvac's flagship was one of the last to fall. As human vessels, sleek, impossible things that moved like liquid mercury through the void, surrounded his position, he finally understood the true meaning of the ancient warnings. Humanity didn't just fight wars. They prepared for wars. For centuries. For millennia, if necessary. Every peaceful trade mission had been reconnaissance. Every cultural exchange had been intelligence gathering. Every diplomatic overture had been misdirection, while they built weapons that turned solar systems into strategic assets. The final transmission from Earth was simple. You were warned. As Korvac's ship was boarded by humans in powered armor that hummed with barely contained energies, he found himself face to face with their commander. The human was smaller than most galactic species, unremarkable except for the absolute confidence in her eyes. "The archive said you were myths," Korvac gasped. The human smiled, a predator's expression. "We prefer it that way. Makes the surprise more effective." "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since the first time your kind visited our system, 500 years ago." "Did you really think we wouldn't notice the surveillance drones, the accidental deep scans of our defenses?" The truth was devastating in its simplicity. Humanity had known this day would come from their first contact with galactic civilization. While other species debated and formed councils and passed resolutions, humans had quietly, methodically, turned their entire star system into a fortress that could repel any conceivable invasion. The ancient warnings hadn't been about human aggression. They had been about human patience. Within days, the scattered remains of the galactic armada limped home with news that would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. Earth, the supposedly primitive human homeworld, had just demonstrated that they possessed weapons technology centuries ahead of anything in known space. The crystal archives on Zephyria suddenly became the most visited site in the galaxy. As species after species came to read the warnings their ancestors had left them, the carved words seemed to pulse with new meaning. They are the species that plans in centuries and thinks in millennia. They are the ones who build weapons from worlds and forge tools from the fundamental forces of reality. They sleep with one eye open and dream of the day their enemies will come. When that day arrives, let no one say they were not warned. Humanity had been underestimated once. The galaxy would not make that mistake again. The myths had become reality, and reality was far more terrifying than any legend.